Looking at the adoption of clean technology in the manufacturing space, how can manufacturers be more sustainable and reduce their carbon footprint?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think one area which is I guess not really technology related, it's more process related, is just around efficiency and waste. I think a lot of manufacturers in this country are still well down the curve, I guess, on adopting lean manufacturing, a lot of productivity improvements. So, I think especially in the small and mid-sized manufacturing space where I operate, I think there are huge opportunities for companies to improve their efficiency and eliminate waste. We talk about things like scrap and idle time on machines and things like that, where I think there's huge potential for gains in just reducing the amount of energy that's required in the manufacturing sector. And all of that doesn't really depend on any new or fancy technology. It's really operations and improving, leaning out operations. So I think that's a big area of opportunity. And then I think the other one that's kind of low-hanging fruit is electrification. There's still a lot of obviously vehicles, cars and trucks, that could be electrified, but then warehouse and operating equipment, right? Forklifts and all that kind of equipment that's operating in warehouses and machines. So I think that's kind of the low-hanging fruit that can be addressed now, should be addressed now, even without the need for a lot of these emergent technologies to be available. So that's where we're kind of focused, and where I think most small and mid-sized manufacturers should be focused.
Thank you very much. And now we'll just have an open discussion. So if anybody wants to answer that question, please go ahead.
I might add just a thought to that. I completely agree. Efficiency and electrification are critical. Another element is to ensure that you're using non-emitting electricity at the end of the day. And we see companies all around the world who are making greenhouse gas emission reduction commitments. And often one of the first places they look is what can they do to decarbonize their electricity supply. And so you see companies from all different kind of sectors, whether it's your Google or your General Motors or your Johnson & Johnson, making these sorts of commitments and then signing agreements directly to purchase renewable energy to provide their electricity needs. In Canada, that's a bit more challenging because of our electricity market structures. Where that can happen very easily is in Alberta. And in Alberta, just so far in 2021, there have been more than 1,200 megawatts of new wind and solar energy projects committed to that are going to be built out because of corporate procurement, looking for that green power essentially for their operations. That's harder to do in other parts of the country, but utilities are responding. Nova Scotia is creating a green choice program to allow their manufacturers to move to make direct purchases of renewable energy. Saskatchewan is introducing SaskPower is introducing 2 programs next year to do the same sort of thing. So utilities across the country are hearing demands from their customers that they are looking to move towards greater adoption of renewable electricity for both cost-saving purposes and also greenhouse gas emission reduction purposes. And that's going to be an important element in terms of reducing your carbon footprint as well.
Daniel, I think you're on mute there.
I am on mute. I'm sorry. Happens in every Zoom, doesn't it? To us at EMC, it's very important to we work in a collaborative way with groups like CanREA, because we think that the best fit for us is to electrify and decarbonize at the same time. When we want to talk about electric mobility being as efficient as possible, we want to come from a clean grid, and that's very important. That's something that we see already in BC and Quebec and elsewhere. But it's very interesting to see some gains being done, some progress happening in Alberta, for instance, and hopefully in Saskatchewan with SaskPower, because it will make one hell of a difference for the carbon footprint of the electric vehicles from light to heavy duty. And when you want to talk about efficiency, well, just going from a gas vehicle to an electric vehicle, I mean, it goes from an efficiency of 30% to an efficiency of 90%. So just switching from that type of vehicle does make a huge difference regarding energy efficiency and lower carbon footprint.
One of the things I think about too is looking more deeply into the supply chain. So, you know, to the extent that manufacturers can procure their their more upstream inputs and their raw materials more closely to home, that reduces transportation, that reduces carbon emissions, obviously. And obviously we want to move to an electrified world, but until then, you know, having access to those raw materials, to those upstream elements, and kind of growing that side of the supply chain more closely to home, I think is an important part of this. So think about, you know, minerals and metals that, you know, sometimes are shipped abroad and then refined and then shipped back to Canada. That's a huge footprint. And so if we can, you know, make headway in reducing that, I think it'll be an important step.
Yeah, I tend to agree with the other, all the other speakers. There's nothing I disagree with. On the supply chain front, that's a big component. I think it's too easy to say you're reducing emissions by just moving them offshore. The other advantage we have here in Canada is we actually have a pretty, not all the provinces, but especially British Columbia, Ontario, Quebec, we do have a very clean grid. And the electrification will have a very, very high impact here. And of course, expanding domestic supply chain. There are also a few standards with respect to manufacturing that have come out. I know ISO has 14,000 or 14,001. There's a standard for environmental manufacturing, which encourages recycling and reduction of waste. So there are a number of standards that are similar, I think.
All right, thank you very much.